what really defines excellence?
Yeah.
I mean, is it just one big success, or is it something messier, like a journey that takes you from, say, engineering all the way over to literature? Today, we're doing a deep dive into someone who kind of embodies that. Achyut Godbole, he's this prolific writer, but also a really accomplished engineer. And his autobiographical sketch, Voyaging Towards Excellence, it gives us some amazing insights into this lifelong search for knowledge for growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And our mission here really is to pull out the key nuggets of wisdom from his life story. We'll look at how he went from being, a middle-class kid in a pretty small house to this figure people really look up to. We want to unpack the ingredients for that success, that real thirst for knowledge he developed. And it's not just about him, right? It's more like a guide, how passion, persistence, and perspective can shape anyone's path.
Okay, so let's get into it. The story starts with this really interesting contrast. He talks about a very simple upbringing. We're talking a 300 square feet house, no fan, no fridge, basic amenities were missing. But then in the same breath, he calls his childhood culturally rich. How does that work?
Right, and that's what's so fascinating. His definition of richness wasn't material at all. Instead, his home was like a hub. An intellectual hub. You had poets Vinda Karendikar, Mangesh Padgaonkar, Vasant Bapat, and top classical musicians too. Played Kumar Gandhar, played Vimsen Joshi, P.N. Jasraj, just dropping by. Imagine growing up hearing debates about Marathi literature, English classics like Shakespeare and Dickens.
Incredible.
Discussions about Van Gogh, Mozart, Michelangelo. So this whole environment, it just baked in this belief that art, music, literature, they're just as vital, maybe even more vital than science or tech. They give life meaning, beyond just making money.
So thinking about that, how does someone listening maybe cultivate that kind of curiosity? It's obvious Godbole had a different way of learning right from the start. He genuinely loved science and math. He found Newton's laws beautiful, the Pythagorean theorem elegant. He wasn't just studying for exams. He loved solving problems. He'd tackle ninth grade problems when he was only in 7th grade.
Just for the fun of it.
Exactly. Just to find the most elegant method.
Which really brings up that question. How do you nurture that kind of authentic curiosity? His whole attitude, this looking beyond marks, it helped him build a really critical problem-solving attitude. And that skill thinking logically, but also fast, was so important later, especially for the IIT entrance exam, the JEE. I mean, the results speak for themselves, don't they? 100% in maths, basically all the way through school to IIT, ranked 16th in the state board, first in his university, got a great rank in the JEE too, even though apparently he could have gotten in directly without even knowing it.
So, getting into IIT, a huge dream achieved. But he says his joy was short-lived. Why was that?
Well, suddenly he's in a totally different world. Mumbai's skyscrapers compared to Solapur's 3-story buildings.
Made change.
Huge. But the real killer was the language barrier. His English was, in his words, very poor. Weak vocabulary, terrible pronunciation, really awkward sentence construction. And this just led to him feeling incredibly lonely, developing this inferiority complex. It sounds really tough, that initial period.
Yeah, really isolating.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, though, does that kind of deep discomfort almost have to happen for someone to develop that fierce drive Godbole showed?
Yeah.
Or could you build that fight-back spirit without such a, jarring experience?
It's a really good question. Humiliation was definitely a trigger for him, no doubt. But maybe the more universal thing is the response to the hardship, not just the hardship itself. Because the turning point was this specific, really humiliating incident. A senior student, convent-educated, very sophisticated English, arrogantly just picked apart everything Godbole said, every error. And it left him feeling, as he put it, extremely humiliated and upset, almost broken. He actually wanted to run away.
But he didn't.
Yeah.
Instead, somehow, he found determination and strength. He stopped himself, thought about everything he'd already achieved, school, college, getting into IIT. He asked himself, why should I give up? And for something as silly as English.
Yeah.
So he decided, okay, I'm going to fight back. And this is where it gets really interesting, the how. He made a concrete plan to get excellent, elegant, and fluent English.
And the strategy was so deliberate, very methodical. First, he consciously stopped doing that thing many people do, thinking in his native language, Marathi, and then translating.
Oh, interesting. So he tried to think in English.
Exactly. He forced himself. And then he started reading English newspapers, novels, but not just reading. He studied etymology, word roots, and phonetics for pronunciation. And here's a classic tip, but he actually did it. Practice speaking in front of a mirror. Yeah. actively listening to himself, finding his mistakes, correcting them, constantly improvising, improving day by day.
That sounds intense. And it wasn't quick, right? Took him, what, 9 or 10 months?
About that, yeah. But the change was huge, transformative. His fear just evaporated. He felt confident speaking English with anyone at length.
It really makes you think, we talk about learning a language, but this sounds more like, I don't know, rewiring his brain almost.
Totally. It wasn't just about words, it was changing the whole thought process. And that level of focused effort, honestly, that's where a lot of us fall down, isn't it? He's stuck with something uncomfortable until it wasn't anymore. And putting this into the bigger picture, mastering English was absolutely fundamental for his career. Think about it. 32 years in IT, rising to CEO, MD of big global software companies. He had to give presentations, negotiate huge multi-million-dollar deals with execs in the US, UK, Australia. And he says he felt absolutely at ease doing that. Why? Because of the effort he put in back at IIT. It really poses a question for all of us, doesn't it? What seemingly small hurdle could we overcome with that kind of focused, all-in approach?
Okay, so mastering English was huge. But then something else very important happened in his 3rd year at IIT. He connects with this group, maybe 15, 20 really brilliant people, students, researchers, professors. These aren't just from IIT, but also places like TIFF, BRG, top research institutes.
Yeah.
Includes top-ranked students, famous mathematicians. And he says he was just instantaneously attracted to this group.
And what's really key here is the impact they had, both immediately and long-term. Up till then, he thought he was, someone intelligent, pretty smart kid.
Yeah.
But meeting them, it showed him what real brilliance meant and made him realize, okay, where I stood. That's a big dose of humility right there. And he also felt really lucky, he says, to connect with world-class minds so early on.
And that global connection just kept growing, didn't it? Later, when he was heading Patney's software division, his office was near MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Right, Brian
He'd just pop over to MIT for lunch sometimes. Says he'd see Nobel laureates at the dining table.
Casual.
And Harvard was just a sure walk away. He could chat with Nobel laureates there, too.
Which brings up a crucial point. How do you not just find, but actually benefit from being in those kinds of amazing environments? You have to actively engage. And his travel helped, too. US, Europe, Japan, Australia, meeting huge names. Yeah. Management gurus like Alvin Toffler, Peter Drucker, C.K. Prahlad, Tom Peters.
Wow.
Tech giants like Vint Cerf, the guy who designed the internet's basic protocols, TCP/IP.
Okay.
And he says these conversations just broadened my horizon, made his aims, his whole worldview global. And those lessons he learned, humility, hard work, passion for excellence, they were clearly going to be so important later on.
So going back to that IIT group for a second, their interests weren't just focused on their engineering studies, were they?
Not at all. That's the amazing part. They were not only more intelligent than me, he says, but they were very well read. Their interests covered basically everything: science, tech, sociology, psychology, economics, philosophy, anthropology, archaeology, politics. All the fine arts, too. Pretty much, as he puts it, almost anything under the sun in which concerned human life and existence.
That's incredible interdisciplinary thinking, isn't it?
Exactly. And none of that was in their IIT curriculum. But remember, Godbole says he never studied just to score marks.
He liked that early attitude.
He saw all this other knowledge, the sea of knowledge, as essential preparation for the examination of life, which he felt was far more important than just passing IIT exams. So he just plunged in. He calls it his period of renaissance. They'd stay up late debating relativity, the Big Bang, aesthetics, philosophy. His cupboard was just overflowing with books on everything. And this period, he feels, really nurtured his curiosity, his humility, his sense of humanity, that concern for others. It made him a strong believer in rationalism, equality for everyone, regardless of caste, creed, race, gender, religion. He ended up treating nature as God and humanity as religion. That's quite a philosophy.
So after IIT, his career wasn't exactly a straight line, was it?
Not even close. First, he joins a nonviolent social movement for tribal communities, participates in peaceful protest, actually goes to jail for 10 days.
Wow. Why?
Then he's jobless for a bit, works for very little money, moves house 13 times before finally landing in information technology.
Quite the detour.
A major detour. And then he spends 32 years in IT. 23 of those as a CEO or managing director for big global software companies. Travels constantly for business, like 150 times, even writes 4 IT books that got translated into Chinese.
That journey really shows incredible resilience, doesn't it? And how that broad knowledge base maybe helped him adapt.
Absolutely. And leading those companies taught him crucial management lessons too, like the importance of teamwork. You can't do it alone, especially if you're egoistic.
Hmm.
The need to lead by example from the front, treating your team, your colleagues like friends. He also learned about motivation, how to be a good listener, setting targets, and the art of delegation, key skills.
Okay, so he reaches the pinnacle of corporate success, multiple CEO MD roles. And then he makes this radical choice. He gave up 2 offers of around 3 crore rupees per annum. That's a lot of money
A huge amount.
to become a writer, to go back to his first love, reading and writing about life, existence, all those big topics. He called it his second innings. That's a massive pivot.
It really is. And looking at the bigger picture, it's such a powerful statement about choosing purpose over just profit. He's written, 34 books in Marathi since then. Many became bestsellers. But he stresses the sales figures, the money. That's not what matters most to him.
What does then?
It's the impact. The fact that his books have genuinely changed thousands of lives for the better. And he gives some really powerful examples. His autobiography, Musafir, and a psychology book, Manat, apparently helped hundreds dealing with depression. Over a dozen people told him they gave up suicidal thoughts after reading them.
Incredible.
His science book, Kimayagar, hundreds finally understood things like relativity or the Big Bang because of it. Boardroom, his management book, helped create at least 20 successful entrepreneurs.
Wow.
Arthat on economics. People told him they could finally understand the business news, like Economic Times or NDTV Profit. Ganiti on maths got people interested in the subject again. And he's written on Indian music, English lit, painting, Western films, music. The list goes on.
It's really striking how he boils down his life's learning into these core values at the end. You take something like never say die for him. That wasn't just a slogan. It was forged in that IIT English struggle, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
That ability to not just endure, but to actively, strategically fight back. That seems like a thread running through everything he did. Would you agree? And he wraps up saying, it's the reactions of thousands of readers, feeling he's touching the hearts of thousands. That's what keeps him going. Then he lists them. Thirst for knowledge, curiosity, humility, humanity, rationality, equality, teamwork, quest for excellence, never say die, thinking big.
I completely agree. It's that active fight back, not just passive resilience, that really stands out. It's not about avoiding problems, but having this ingrained response to turn them into growth opportunities. And that ties straight into the quest for excellence. It's a continuous pursuit, not a static thing you achieve. And his shift to writing, choosing impact over income, that just perfectly shows the humanity and thinking big he talks about.
Right.
It reminds you that real excellence can actually be about how much you contribute to others understanding their well-being.
So this whole deep dive into Achyut Godbole's life, it really hammers home that excellence isn't some finish line you cross. It's more like a constant voyage, right? Fueled by this mix of curiosity, real resilience, and this deep-seated desire to understand the world and to make a difference for others.
Yeah, and his story really pushes us to think critically, doesn't it? How do we measure success? Is it just the external stuff, the awards and titles? Or is it about the richness of our experiences, how broadly we understand things, and the positive impact we have?
So for you listening, as you think about your own journey towards whatever excellence means to you, how can Godbole's story shed some light? Maybe think about this. Perhaps your biggest learning, your greatest impact, won't come from sticking rigidly to the plan. Maybe it comes from adopting that problem-solving attitude when life throws you curveballs and really cultivating that thirst for knowledge about, everything under the sun.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If that examination of life really is more important than any school test, what knowledge are you actively looking for beyond your required reading, beyond your job description? And how are you planning to use it, not just to enrich your own life, but to contribute something meaningful to the world around you?